Namaskar and welcome to this show of Sattology, exciting episode of Sattology on temple architectures. One of my favorite places in India is to visit different temples. You must have seen many videos of mine in different temples in South India, in North India, in Central, and also we are starting a new project on Native Americans, Native South Americans, Native Mexicans, Native Europeans, and also you will be surprised to know what I'm going to tell you, Native Russians. Yes, indeed, there are Native Russians and large population between Moscow and Vladivostok, which is on the east side. There are a lot of latent native territories. And pyramids are not just pyramids is just a geographical term given to a or architectural term given to a shape, but generally they were ancient temples, and we have seen that everywhere that they follow a very close vastu architecture, very close, reserved for temples. Generally, most of the temples are square in shape. Most of the commercial establishments are rectangular in shape. Most of the houses are supposed to be rectangular in shape, but temples are supposed to be square on all sides. And this is a difference between the architectures, and that's why when I go to these ancient sites in other countries, I compare them to the ideal architectures of Ranganath, ideal architecture of Jagannath Puri, ideal architecture of Padmanath Swami, Adi Keshav Temple. So these architectures have been preserved over time. If you look at the Chalukya, Chola, Pallava, all these periods you see, all the temples are square. That's the way our Vastu goes. And all the pyramids are square. So pyramids are not just the name of a canonical structure. Pyramids represent something divine. I have a very special guest today, and we are going on a journey to the east of India. In Mahabharata, it's called Bangladesh. Today is called Bengal or Bangladesh. Both are parts of the same region, which is being referred to in Mahabharata. So I have a special guest. Let's welcome Monidipa.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me here.
So one of the things comes in the mind is the general architecture of India. So how do you classify the temple architectures of India based on different regions?
See, if we look at this temple architecture, if we read the old scriptures, basically, we will find the current divisions, as most people know, is Nagara, Dravida, Vesera. These are the three basic architectural forms which are taught in our books and which we are also aware of. Nagara is the North Indian basic the temples we see with those tall curvilinear shikharas, and the Dravida, the South Indian temples, which we see, which have the gateways, the gopurams, and the pyramidical vimanas on top of the sanctum. And the combination of the two is the Vesara, which we find in the Deccan part, middle part. But if we read the scriptures, we will find these are later names which have been given. Earlier in the temples, if we read the old text, we'll find that if you read Brihad Samhita, if you read Agni Purana, we will find that these texts refer to 20 temples. These were the first temples which we find in the scriptures, in the compiled books that we have, 20 temples. This was later revised to 45 names. Number was increased, but the original temples were 20 temples, and they has precise measurements. These temples were built on very precise measurements, and that is the most important thing in a temple, in a Hindu temple architecture. The most important thing is the proportionate measurement, and these 20 temples are described based on the rules of the proportionate measurement. And these names are also there in other books like Vishwakarma Prakasha, Samaranga Sutra, Matsya Purana, etc. And the names of these temples were Meru, Mandara, Kailasha, Nandana, Vimana Chanda, Kunjara, etc. These are just the names. And these 20 temples were similar to the 5 Vimanas which Brahma had created, the 5 divine chariots that Brahma had created for God. So these 20 temples are prasadas were similar to these 5 vimanas. The 5 vimanas were named as Vairaja, Pushpaka, Kailasha, Manika, and Trivistava. So our temples did not originally have this names Nagara, Dravida, Vesara. Our temples were based on these temples are named basically based on the measurements and the shapes that they had, and the basic shape was a vimana. So our temple was originally conceptualized as chariots, the divine chariots that Brahma had created for the gods. So those 5 divine chariots that he had created, the temples were all based on those 5 divine chariots. So that is why if you notice the South Indian temples, the Sikhara is still known as Vimana, because that is the base. Our base is our chariot. Our temple is a chariot, the 5 divine chariots that Brahma had created. So these names were all later added. The original temples were 20 temples, which were, they had various names based on the shapes, and these were all conceptualized as one of those 5 Vimanas that Brahma had created. So from there, later on, we find the divisions coming up as Nagara. As the time went on, the structures also started changing, evolving, whatever you say. And then we come across this divisions, the Nagara, the Dravida, and the Vesara. And then we also have the regional divisions, of which the most famous is the Kalinga. Kalinga division is a part of the Nagara, but it's a little separate from the Nagara. So these are the various basic temple forms. The older forms were the 20 temples from the older text, and the newer version is the Nagara, Dravida, and the Vesara. These 3 are the new ones. So if you look at this temple architecture, the Bengal side, if you go to the, since I'll be talking on the Bengal side, first let me see, whenever you speak of Bengal temple architecture, you will find that we think of those Chala temples, those typical Bengal Chala temples, those hut. We think of those, but actual Bengal, if we look at the ancient Bengal temples, they were not at all the Chala temple. Chala temple, the Chala structure is very old. We find it in the stupa, the snakes. They are all there. Even in Chandraketugarh, which goes to 3rd century BC, 4th century BC, the Chala structure is there. So, but somehow it got removed from the temple architecture, and what Bengal actually had is very different. What Bengal actually had was stone temples, or even if there were brick temples, these were what we see now, some the Orissa part. Orissa temples, what we now see in Orissa, was actually also there in Bengal. So this entire region had the same temples. Now Orissa, there are 2 distinct divisions in Orissa architecture. Orissa, the earlier part is the post-Gupta period, Gupta and the post-Gupta period temple architecture. And there is a second part is the slightly later on. It comes in the 11th, 12th century, built by the Ganga dynasty, which is Lingaraj temple is one of the examples of those temples. Those are different. That is the Kalinga architecture which is coming, which is slightly later. Now, Bengal temple.
I'll just stop you here a little bit slightly.
Yeah.
So you mentioned about the Vimana in one of the things you're thinking, yes. Vimana in the south. So Viman is the name of an architecture, or you're referring to the Vimana?
Vimana in South India is a Shikhara part. The Shikhara part is now known as Vimana. Like we call in North Indian sculpture, the temple architecture, the tower is known as Shikhara.
Correct.
May the Shikhara over the sanctum, over the Garbhagriha, that tall structure, that pyramidal structure, that is known as Vimana. It is 2 separate. Just remember, people confuse the 2. One is Gopuram. Gopuram is on top of the gateway. When you're entering a South Indian temple, you enter through a gateway, which is huge. They have this huge towers over this temple's gateway. That is Gopuram. That is separate. Now you're going inside. When you go inside, there's a temple mandapa. Then there's a temple sanctum, the Garbhagriha inside. On top of the Garbhagriha, the Shikhara, the South Indian Shikhara is known as Vimana.
Okay.
Why is it known as Vimana? Because originally temples were designed keeping in mind the 5 Vimanas that Brahma had, the divine chariots that he had designed for the gods. So, and those 5 names, as I told you, are Vairaja, Pushpaka, Kailasha, Manika, and three Vistapa. These were the five divine chariots he had created. So this Vimana name that the South Indian temples still have is related back to the old scriptures, where the temples were originally the 20 temples which were originally designed keeping in mind of the divine chariots.
Very coinciding with the Ravan's Pushpak Viman.
Yes, yes.
So similar architecture which could fly, something like that.
Yes.
But in the resemblance of that thing, this is called Viman. So,
Yes.
so where are the other types of Vimana in different temples? Like Viraja, you're mentioning.
These are the names of the five Vimanas which Brahma had designed. Vairaja, Pushpaka, Kailasha, Manika. These names are not now used anymore.
Mhm.
It's all gone in the past. We have them in the book, so we know at one time they used to name temples this way. Beautiful names they had of temples: Meru, Mandara, Kailasha. Kailasha name is still there. We have the Kailasha temple. Kailasha Nathar, we have one in Kanchipuram, we one have in Ellora. So Kailasha name is still there. The other rest of the names have all gone. They are all forgotten. Meru, Mandara, Nandana, Bhimana Chanda, Kunjara, Gaja. Gaja would be like an elephant. So they had beautiful names of these temples which are not used anymore. Now we have come down to only Nagara, Dravida, and Vesara. So beautiful
Actually,
names are not used anymore.
yeah, I was looking. Pushkar temple is called Viraja.
Yes, so these are all old names.
Old names.
Vairaja means one of the five Vimanas of Brahma. So
Correct.
can relate to those.
I'm connecting it. Yeah.
Yes, old names. These are old
names.
Names they had, and these are all forgotten now.
Yeah, go ahead. You're telling me something about.
So now when we, I'm talking about a certain incident. What happened? My book is it's printed now. It's going to be soon. I'm going to get the author's copy. When my book, the cover picture came up, I had posted on the Himachal and Bengal connection of temples. And when I had gone to Himachal, I knew that the Bengal dynasties were there, the Palas and the Senas went, and their temple architecture is very different to what now temples still are existing in Bengal. Those Chala type terracotta temples, they are beautiful, but they are later period. So that is what set me off what was going on in Bengal, and then I started studying the history. The Bengal temples, there are few still Pala, Sena eras remaining, which can be connected to those Himachal temples which they had built. And they all are similar to those typical Nagara Shikhara of the, still there are some few Odisha, the earlier part of Odisha temples with this Rekha Deul type of temples. So Bengal, ancient Bengal had very different type of temples, and there were four types of temples basically. And the saddest part is this: when the invasions happened, these temples were all destroyed. For 1 or 2 centuries, only destruction happened. And so most of these stone temples, old temples, are not there now. So while I was researching on these temples, I had to study old scriptures. I had to study old manuscripts, beautiful manuscripts. Nepalese manuscripts they have, where they have documented Bengal temples drawing, beautiful drawings, and of Buddha sitting. These are all the Nepali manuscript. It's now in Cambridge University, and they have this. It's entirely Buddhist depiction of Bengal when the Buddhism was popular at that time. So they have this Buddhist temples all beautifully recorded. They show this typical Bengal temples and where Buddha is sitting, and from that you get to know the old Bengal temples are very different at that time. And if you go to Orissa, if you see the Orissa temples, it's more or less similar. So I was studying those manuscripts. I had to study the old text, and very interestingly, sculptures. Sculptures, if you notice the Pala sculptures, you will find they used to make this gods sit in the front. Behind, they used to make the temples. Now, I never saw it in this way. When I started researching on this subject, I realized what they have done in sculptures is they have kept the gods in front. Which say Lord Vishnu, Sri Vishnu standing, or Shiva and Parvati are sitting in front. At the back, they have designed a temple. So, what temples were there at one point of time before the destruction happened, you get to know from sculptures also. So, it's a very beautiful way of learning about the old temples. And then you have models. They have the small miniature models from where you get to know how temples were. So, if we study the ancient Bengal temples, you will find that they had four types. One was the pier type, which is called the Pira type now in Orissa, where you find they are in steps. Stepped, the Shikhara part is stepped basically. So one step, then there is a little bit raised, then again another step. So it's, if you think, if you see the Himalaya, if you imagine the Himalayan temples, you will find that it is a little pyramidal in shape, and they have this layers. They are slowly going up. It's slowly decreasing in height. So that is how they made it in stone. In Himalaya, you find it's made in wood. Basically, most of them are wood. Those tiers. In Orissa and Bengal, they have this in stones. So Bengal had this lower part was the pillars, and the upper part was those typical pyramid with those layers slowly going up. That is known as the Pira type, or the tier type of temple. That was one type they had. The second type was what is, there are many Rekha Deul temples still. A Pira type of temple in Bengal is almost gone now. It's not there. So what we get to know about those is mostly from the manuscripts and the drawings, paintings of old, the old miniature temples that they have. We get to know of this pier type. If you want to see pier type, you have to go to Orissa. The older temples of the Orissa, similar to what Bengal had once. Then we move on to the Rekha Deul temple. Rekha Deul temples are still there in Bengal. The Vardhaman area part they still have. So if you see the Rekha Deul temple now, this Rekha Deul temple were the ones which were got carried over to Himachal Pradesh and parts of Uttarakhand also. You find the basic sanctum and the tall curvilinear shikhara on top of that. And what is very interesting is that the very older ones excavated from Bengal, like they have this famous Khana DB. Bengal archaeology is in a mess. After independence, they did not excavate this. They have a lot of mounds in Bengal, like Khonamihire DB. It's very old. If you go back, it will go to BC era. If you keep digging, it will most likely go to prehistoric era also. Work hasn't been done properly. Whatever work was done was till the 50s, 60s, 70s. After that, work was stopped. Political reasons, I'm not going into it. But when they had excavated this Khonamihire Devi, they had found temples. If you think of imagine in your mind the Kedarnath temple, they have this basic sanctum and the shikhara over it, and they have this mandapa in front with a slightly small pyramidal roof on top of the mandapa. That temple is an ancient Bengal temple architecture. So, if you want to imagine the Bengal, how old the temples were there in Bengal, you have to think of this temple. Think of the Himachal temples where those the sanctum is there, square sanctum, the curvilinear shikhara. This is in Bengal, the original temples had the mandapa in front with the shikhara and the curvilinear shikhara, Rekha Deul style. Later on, that was for a very short period. Later on, the same Rekha Deul temples were carrying on, but the mandapa was not being built anymore. So what they were doing is that this sanctum. Right in front of the sanctum is a small little gate attached to the sanctum, which we in architectural terms we call as a vestibule. So they have this vestibule over there, which on the upper part, the pinnacle, that upper part of the vestibule, which we call as the Sukhanasika, is there, and it ends there. So you come to the temple, you stand in front of that little extended part of the temple, which is known as vestibule, and you enter. There is no mandapa, there is just directly the sanctum and the shikhara, Rekha Deul shikhara. This temple architecture was carried over to the Himachal Pradesh temples. If you see the Himachal Pradesh temples, you will find they don't have mandapas. This was carried from Bengal. Bengal, interestingly, also, not only did they move to the western part, to the north part, Bengal, from the Bengal temple architecture also spread to the southeast part, because they used this Tamrolepti port, is a very ancient port of Bengal, and the traders used to go settle down in the southeast part. Once the traders went, others also went, the Brahmins went to spread Hinduism. These parts were all Hindus. Previously, before Buddhism went, they were all Hindus. So they also carried the architecture. So if you go to Burma, temples are not there in, sadly, West Bengal, Bangladesh don't have temples, existing temples. They have those destroyed structures from which we study. Burma has many temples still existing of the ancient Bengal style. Indonesia has the Java part. So if you want to study these ancient Bengal temples, we have to give examples of Burma temples, we have to give examples of Indonesian temples or the early Orishan temples. So this Rekha structure was the second type, which was very popular in ancient Bengal, and they had both in stones and bricks. And beautiful examples, the ones that are still remaining Pala era, very beautifully carved temples. And then the other two types were again of the structure, the pier types, the pira types. Very interesting. They had this pyramid on top of the sanctum, and then on top of that they have a shikhara. For the Hindu temples, they have a shikhara for the Hindu temples. For the Buddhist temple, they have a stupa. So they were the two, so that when you come and see the temples, you know this is a Hindu temple or a Buddhist temple. They used to build in this way. The tier temples are coming up. On top of that, they have a shikhara. So you know this is a Shiva temple. They most likely put a Shiva linga also on top. You know this is a Hindu temple. If you look at stupa, you know this is a Buddhist temple. So beautifully divided. You know where you are entering, and so these four type temples were there in ancient Bengal, and most of them, only the Rekha temples are now seen. The rest types are all gone, and to see them, you have to either travel to Orissa or to Southeast Asia. This is the saddest part of Bengal history. And another very interesting part of Bengal architecture is they have this square-shaped temple. And this is not seen in any other parts of India. Whatever got carried off, there is one in Kashmir and one in Himachal Pradesh. In the
maybe those squares were the other types of architectures Brahma created.
Whereas it is open on four sides. It's a step. You rise up. You all four sides. You can climb up the temple, and the four sides are open. So this got carried over from Bengal. And this was originated in Bangladesh. Now, what is actually Bangladesh basically? Mahastanagar, that area is known as. And it was most likely it originated from there, and then it got carried off to various parts. Southeast Asia has them. Kashmir has one temple which was carried over there by the Sena dynasty. And HP1 has one in Bajora district, Basheshwara temple. It got carried over by the Pala kings from Bengal. So whatever they carried off, it went from here, and this is a very unique temple. So Bengal at one point had very beautiful temples. The Bengal revival jo hua tha, the Hindu temple revival bhi hua tha. This is what I'm talking is the ancient, before the pre-Islamic, before the, say, till 12th century, these temples were there. The pira type temple and the Rekha type temples were there in Bengal. Full Bengal landscape was full. If you read Hyang Sanka, his travel book, you will find he's saying that there are so many temples. This is a land of temples, basically. So temples.
Even today, if you go to Myanmar, you'll see temples everywhere.
Myanmar temple architecture is completely gone from eastern side of India, Bengal and Orissa.
It was Anga, Banga, and Myanmar was considered Bangladesh. Like it was a huge area.
Yes, it's just right beside Bangladesh.
Yeah, in Bangladesh, like Mahabharat, when Ang is like between the Kalinga and Banga is Anga, like a small area on the eastern side of today Bihar and the western side of West Bengal, so-called. That is the Angadesh. But after that is Banga, and then Banga continues very long. Like there is a picture of British time picture on the World War II, and the planes are flying, and I saw in one of the documentaries, and the plane is going low. The British bomber is going low. Everywhere just temples, green and temples. It's like a whole valley of temples. And people can search out. Yeah, people can search out the Eastern World War II expedition of the British, and there is one bomber which is flying low, and they can check out. And I think some temples, some pictures were also published also, which we can also see. One question comes in the place is, like when we look at the Bangladesh pre-1173 or 1130, that's your age you look. Krishna Dev Rai is still there. Sylhet. So have you studied those architectures of Sylhet area? Because those places are filled with Krishna temples. Because after the Bangladesh is where Ulup Desh was there, where Arjun marries Chitrangada, which is called Manipur today, Manipur and Tripura. Yes, go ahead.
I'll come. This is a very interesting topic. I'll tell you what happened in Bengal. In Bengal, it was Ram that was very popular. Okay. So when you talk of ancient Bengal, it's Ram, Sri Ram.
Sri Ram, that's right.
Ramchandra was popular.
Yeah.
Sri Krishna comes, say, from around 1340. He was there. He was already there. We know from the Jayadev, he was a port poet of the Senas.
Yeah.
It was already, Radha Krishna is already there. But it became pop. You know, this Bengal, this Hindu revival, this 2 centuries after this invasions and all, there was a lot of unrest and chaos. After that, Bengal there was this Hindu revival. This came because of Sri Krishna Radha. So you find this Krishna Radha temples mostly from the, say, 14th century. Temple building had never stopped in Bengal. Whatever what was going on, whatever has happened, they had this. Bengal actually was never conquered. Since I'm reading the history of Bengal right now, it's very interesting to read. It never actually went completely under the Islamic period. So it was, they always had this local chieftains, local kings, and they kept on building temples. The Malla kings, they were, rabid temple builders. The entire area, the entire kingdom was filled with temple. Now it's almost all our ruins. But they used to build a lot of these temples. They loved this Rekha Deul style, and they have a lot of temples. These are all from the Krishna that came in. Mahabharata mentions Bhima's, he had come there, and Yudhishthira also had come. They had all gone to Ganga Sagar, that part, for the holy dip in the Ganga. So at that time, ancient Bengal has Sri Ram, which was more popular. Then came in Krishna from the 14th century, and with Sri Krishna came in the Hindu revival with Sri Chaitanya. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the one who brought in the Hindu revival period, very strong revival, and it was because of Sri Krishna and Radha. So most of this temples, the Chala style temples, the terracotta temples that you see now in Bengal are all Sri Krishna Radha temples, mostly because they brought in this deluge of Hindu revival, and so the temples are in the name, and Sri Chaitanya was leading it at that time. So, as you said, the thing that you asked, Sri Krishna is very popular still. He's very popular. Many temples are there, and most of this famous Makura, this terracotta temples, you will find is of Sri Krishna temples. Because he was ruling, let's say, Bengal from 14th century onward. He was there before, but he became Rama, slowly went to the little bit to the background, and Sri Krishna became more popular. So this is a very interesting part in Bengal history when Sri Krishna became popular from 14th century onward. So, and it's still popular.
See,
Sri Krishna
Bengal
popular in
has Bengal has always given thought leaders to
Yes, yes.
from the time of Kapila Muni. Kapila Muni went there to Sundarban and he did his tapasya, and that's where the Bhagirathi came, all the way following him. Now, the temples of Bengal, like you correctly mentioned, they're open on all sides.
That is that style is known as Sarvata Bhadra.
Sarvata Bhadra. And good point. I was about to say that name. So but also there is another concept which Bengal introduced to the world, especially in Ahom Rajas, all the Assam Rajas, because see, people may see it as a different state nowadays, but if you look at
these states are all new divisions.
It's all Bangladesh, like all covered in one area. Entire Bangladesh was like a I don't know why.
One should actually read the history of India and Bengal by R.C. Mujumdar. He's drawn the maps very well to explain how the kingdoms were functioning.
See, kingdoms are Janpad and other places are there, but still they all accepted the rule of one central, most powerful king. In that region, the most powerful Krishna Dev Rai, if you say 11th century, early century, and his descendants. So my question to you is, so there was another concept introduced, what Hatta, like a Nama Hatta, which Ahom Rajas, the kings of Assam, to the Ahom Raja, they introduced in a big way, where there was no deity in the temple and people could come there and just congregate and chant or do meditation. That was also became very popular because that was the way Ahom Rajas united the whole population. So do you know anything about that? The history of
Yes, this is in Bengal also we have this. We call this Dol Mancha.
Dolmanch.
A Dol Mancha is where they have this beautiful structure, single hall structure,
Mm.
sometimes open, sometimes closed. And they sometimes they would just keep a tulsi over there, tulsi mancha, and they would Dol Mancha basically is where they used to congregate, come together to celebrate Dol. Dol is holy for Bengal. So they used to come and play. So it's basically the meeting point for various religious celebrations. Dol Mancha is basically where again Sri Krishna is coming in. So Dol is Holi is played very vigorously in Bengal because of Sri Krishna. And these Dol Manchas were famous. You have to see this beautiful terracotta Dol Manchas, which were built post 13th, 14th centuries. And they have beautiful terracotta plaques all over. And this is where people used to come and play, get together for religious things. And so the same concept as you said of the Om Raja, same thing. Only the language is different, so we are calling as Dol Mancha, Mancha basically, Mancha, Mancha. And they are calling it as in a different term. They're using a different term for it. So it's basically the same thing because Eastern India, this entire place, they have the same architecture, and once they were all a part of the same cultural also, so they have the same concept. So Bengal also had this place to come together where people would get together in manchas and celebrate. Beautiful manchas. You must see those temples of this Dol manchas. Beautiful.
See, the most of the places, if you look at the, in today's age, it's difficult to maintain a temple because it's such impossible task for people to invest in a large property and maintain it also. The taxes are taken from the temples instead of being given to the temples. Normally, the governments used to construct temples so that there is a social sanity, mental stability, and more value-based education is given. So the purpose of the temple was to spread goodwill all over the world. In fact, one of the temple documents I was reading that any temple of India must serve 50-kilometer radius. Nobody should go hungry. So they were also part of the very poor people who cannot afford food can take shelter of the temple, and they at least they won't be hungry. But all this is lost, and Bengal was a pioneer in that. Pioneer, like if you look at the Sylhet, and I'm just talking about 600 years back, 700. Like I'm talking about the like around 1500s, which is much later than the Islamic invasion. Even then, the density population, the density was high in that area because the land is very fertile. It's not that today Bangladesh is heavily populated. It's being like that for
Always populated.
always heavily populated because the food is easily available, water is easily available. Brahmaputra,
It's a land of rivers, very fertile area.
very fertile area. And so, how do you see that today's temples in Bangladesh? If you talk about North Bangladesh, because it's still part of the same culture, and extending to West Bengal. West Bengal is so. How do you see the today's temple structures there? Which are the prominent temples in Bangladesh and West Bengal?
West Bengal has a lot of temples from the 14th, especially 18th, 19th century. They have a lot of temples, and Bangladesh temples. Bangladesh. I was trying to. I was reading. I'm reading books on Bengal temples now. Bangladesh temples, I would really like to go. Dhaka, so they have this Dhakeshwari temple, the famous temple over there. Then where our PM Narendra Modi ji went, he has been closely working with two temples in the Dhaka area. So Dhakeshwari, Ganeshwari, all these temples, he's visited them. Those are there, but the rest of the temples, old temples, how the renovation is going, I'm not very clear. I had come across a Gupta period temple in Bangladesh, and there is no trace of it. All books have recorded the temple, but there are no pictures of it. And when I started searching for it, nobody could tell me. There are no pictures. Nobody could tell me about it. So Bangladesh temple, I would love to visit one day and see what is going on in Bangladesh. I really would like to see what is going on over there. West Bengal temples are there. I know my friends are all there. Many are into conservation and all. So many temples, this West Bengal conservation work in the Bakura side is going on. The state government is not doing a good job because they are painting temples, they're destroying terracotta plaques, and lots of very priceless plaques have also been stolen. It's a very shady thing which is going on, but otherwise, they are painting, they're trying to conserve, and people who know conservation are working on it. Individual effort is also coming up. Lots of temples are still lying in ruined conditions, but at least there's a general awareness is there in now West Bengal. Bangladesh is very foggy. I really like to know what is going on in Bangladesh. I've asked people, and they have the museums are filled up with this Bangladesh. They have it was entirely flattened. Most of the old temples are not there, so they have this Hindu zamindars when they were in this. I'm talking the pre-partition era. They had made beautiful collections. They have collected all these sculptures which were found. They had put them together and they had placed in Dhaka Museum. Then there is another. There are lots of museums out in Bangladesh which has which stores this priceless collection of temple parts, sculptures. What has happened to them? I don't know, because when I try searching for them, I get only few. Where are they? They should actually put them on online and let us know, because when we try to study sculptures, Bangladesh was also a part of Bengal, so we need to know. And Bangladesh had a lot of temples, many temples. As I was saying, the Sarvatabhadra was originated in Bangladesh. So many temple sculptures and many unique things have come from there. And they had all put before partition, before they came back, it was all put in those beautiful museums. And the museums I have heard are full of such priceless treasures, but you won't get pictures. So I'd really like to know what is going on in the Bangladesh museum and this how they are maintaining this temple. Because I get very foggy news of what is going on. Suddenly, Bangladesh is since they used to hide these murtis during the time of invasion. So whenever they dig for wells or dig for roads, murtis keep coming up. We get to hear murtis are coming up. We get to hear that they have gone to the archaeology division, but where they are after that, we can't trace them. Bengal, we know what is happening, but West Bengal, Bangladesh, we don't know. That is a major problem because Bangladesh has a lot of beautiful sculptures. This I know because the old historians like Bhattashali, R.C. Mujumdar, they have all recorded the sculptures. But we can't see those pictures anymore. Pala era sculptures, if you see the murtis that they had, most of the good ones have already gone to foreign lands. But Bangladesh museum is supposed to hold priceless treasures. So I would really, really like to know what is going on in Bangladesh. I would like to see those museums, the sculptures they hold, the temple work, what they're doing. So it's disappointing. I'm very disappointed with both Bengal and West Bengal and Bangladesh.
I think we all need to work together. There's no need for disappointment. So the thing is, see the ancient Hindu culture or the traditional native culture. I mean, I call Hindu culture as the most ancient or the original native culture of the world, because everything ties back to Vedas, everything in the world. And you can study the ancient temples of Native Americans from the Vedic perspective, on Vastu perspective. You can study South America from Vastu perspective. You can study, actually, there were huge temples in Europe also that I have come across, which are covered right now, or on top of it, the churches are made, but still churches the temples are intact. The same thing like we see that if you look at the Asia, then the original native culture of the world, which is a Hindu culture, is still a thriving nation today. India has again come back from what it was due to Islamic rules or something.
Lots of new temples are coming up. This is a very good sign.
Like in
Haryana, I stay in Haryana, so I'm seeing lots of new temples are getting, their temple renovation work is going on, new temples are coming. It's a very good sign.
And it is advantageous for countries like Bangladesh or Pakistan also to revive their Hindu heritage, because only we have shown that despite of all the attacks, Hindus have survived and they're flourishing again. Like if you talk about the economy of Asia, then only 3 countries count: Japan, China, and India. And Japan is very closely connected to Hindu culture. Even Japanese admit it. Koreans also, nowadays South Koreans are coming to missionary activities.
Koreans are very, yes,
but
major problem.
But if you ask the Korean dojo, like the actual schools you go, they will have a great respect for Indoi culture, Indoi, because they
because they're
believe
trying to connect. They are
they're
trying
trying
to
to connect.
connect back to the roots.
Correct, because the original cultures ultimately they come up in any way, like
Is
in
Hinduism. Original was Hinduism.
and in USA also the native cultural ethos are coming up now. More and more, I'm seeing that people are realizing that the just the wild rush from material or creating cities, it is a European concept and it is not sustainable. It just creates too much
Mm-hmm.
pressure on the societies and it is not long term. So my question to you is, like, in your study of Bengal architecture, in today's time when there is less money, less time, people have smaller health, bigger health issues, what kind of temple architectures are sustainable in Bengal?
They can do, see, chala type of temple, which we know of Bengal is the easiest to build. It's like a hut. You build that temple, or you can build the Nagara type basic square sanctum with a shikhara basic structures you can build with. If you have less money, do this. But what I will ask, if when you are building a temple, which I've always insisted on, keep deities on the temple walls. One, as I go around, you focus on the god, you see the deity outside on the temples, so you know that the you can keep your focus and you know which and various aspects of the deity. So people also know this is like Shiva has various aspects. One is you can say Lingodbhava in South Indian temples. You see the various forms of Shiva, so you know the stories behind it. Once you see the sculptures, you also know that he has this various forms, and you take interest. You, if you it is too expensive, paint on the temples. Sculpture is expensive, so you paint. Draw the Mahabharata stories of Mahabharata. Draw the stories of Ramayana temple, so that the people who are going, not everybody knows, but once they go, they see those paintings. These are cheap. Paintings are cheap. You can get it done easily. Draw the basic. Just build a basic sanctum. Draw shikhara is very important. Build the shikhara on top. No need for mandapa if there is no money. So basic square sanctum, curvilinear shikhara, and do paintings of Ramayana, Mahabharata around the temples or the Puranic stories. The Shiva is the chief deity inside. Then put his various forms so that people know what has various forms. This way, education of our religion is also going on. People who don't know will also come to know about the stories, various forms of the god inside. Plus, it's also cheap. You don't have to make sculptures. Sculptures are very expensive. Only the people, wealthy people can do it. Let them do Birla temple and all. They have a lot of sculptures. Let them do it that way. But for the common people, just make these basic things. In Bengal street temples, if you find, you will find they do beautifully. They put those tiles, and then they put, if it's a Shiva temple, they will put Shiva faces all around the temple. So you know the Shiva temple, when you're going around, you can see Shiva all around. It should be that way. Then what I'm saying is, additionally, make small paintings of Mahabharata and Ramayana, so that people know the stories also. They're aware of what is happening in those epics. This is nothing. We are staying in touch with our own religion, because once this touch goes away, we know what happens in remote areas. Earlier, this people, the storytellers, the bards used to go with the scrolls and tell stories of Hinduism. They used to sing and dance and tell the stories of Mahabharata and Ramayana, opening the scrolls and tell them. That's how those remote village people stayed connected to Hinduism. This system of bard storytelling by the bards slowly disappeared after independence. It was somehow it was made irrelevant. So once the bard stopped going, then these people got disconnected. Nobody's coming to tell them stories. One generation is ended, next generation doesn't know the stories. That's how they got disconnected, and conversion started happening, because once you're disconnected, all these other things start coming up. So these are the very important things. And these are build a very basic temple. Draw Mahabharata epic stories. Draw the main god with various forms, and start praying. So if keep the tell the priest to learn those stories that are depicted on the walls, so that when the devotees come, he can explain the stories that are depicted on the walls. Basic, very basic. Doesn't need much money for all these things, but this is how you stay connected to your religion. And then I think one very important thing is we need to start with the storytelling. Uh, have bards go to the remote village corners, start again with the scroll, tell them the stories of Mahabharata, Puranas, and get them back, get them connected back to the religion. root must be there. The root connection has to start again. That is how we can again protect our own things. This is how it has been done through the centuries. We need to restart that again.
We have many viewers from Bangladesh who watch our show. And
Mhm.
one of the things in Bangladesh is the Hindu persecution is very high.
Yes,
And,
very high.
and one of the reasons is, even though Dhaka
Mm.
was earlier known as Vrindavan in
Mhm.
1500s or 1400s, as recent as 1500, it was known as Vrindavan. There was every corner a temple of Krishna and Radha.
Mm.
And
Mm.
because of Gaudiya Vaishnav and everyone else. And the Sylhet was the place where Guru Nanak Dev started his work from
Mhm.
Bengal. And gradually he met over there Nityanand from in Chaitanya Bhagavat it is mentioned.
Chaitanas, yes, yes.
They met Nityanand Prabhu. So the thing is, with such a rich history of Bangladesh, why the and since you live in India, I'm asking why the Ministry of Culture of India focuses on reviving the culture of the Bharat, with everyone talks about Akhand Bharat, but nobody focuses on the Akhand Bharat culture. Akhand
Mm.
Bharat culture was built on temples.
Temples.
So why the Ministry of Culture doesn't focus on there, or a Ministry of External Affairs doesn't focus in Bangladesh on reviving the culture, which will
It's
bring
a very
prosperity
good
to
question.
Bangladesh actually. What is
Very
your
good question. Because they are focusing a lot. I will say that Cambodia, Vietnam, they are focusing temples there. They're working. ASI is really working over there, and they have revived many temples. And but Bangladesh is a very touchy point. They are not taking it up. Our PM went to Bangladesh. He had revived two temples over there, and they had done a good job on those two temples, Dhaka temple, two temples. But rest of the temples, they have really good temples, and they really need revival also. And I don't know, really, I don't can't figure out why the Ministry of Culture is not taking part in this, because it's very important that they take part in Bangladesh temple revival. Lots of temples, lots of old temples, no? Very priceless temples, lots of priceless sculptures.
still there? Still there.
Still there, it's still there. Medieval temples, the terracotta temples are still there. There are lots of things to work on Bangladesh, and they can really work on it. But I don't know, they're not taking part in it. I don't know why. They are working in Southeast Asia, but not Bangladesh.
It's like it is important to work in South Asia also because they are more friendlier to India,
They're more friendlier, yes.
more friendlier, and but sometimes somebody has to put their hand in the beehive too. So,
Yes. Somebody has to put the hand in the fire and said, yes, okay, we will get burned, but work has to be done.
all right. Thank you so much, Monidipa ji, for coming on the show and sharing some light on the Bengal architecture. I hope the viewers got some glimpse of it. And my whole point is you watch our show, do your own research, or read Monidipa's book, which is coming up.
My blog, they can read my blog. My blog has this on Bengal temple architecture.
So, what is your blog address?
My name is monidipa.net.
.net, monidipa.net. And
.net.
read that also and check it out. And you can also write on sattology.org so that more people can see that. So
Okay.
we can do that also.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you all the viewers for watching, and do let us know your feedback. Do subscribe, share, and believe me, we are coming soon on Spotify. So all these talks you can hear while driving, and everything you can do. So it's all coming very soon. So namaste and thank you.
Thank you.